Slightly better showing for the bourse, just modest gains of 5 points, but at least the market trading in the green. What do you attribute that to?
Thanks for having me. I attribute that to a slight recovery that was due, given that last week's decline was rather exaggerated. The market got oversold last week. I think last week, the jitters of last week were overstated, as indeed have been the jitters for this year. So I think the fact is the market still has lots of value. There are lots of companies that present lots of value for investors, and I think long-term investors are realizing the same.
Judd, a better showing for Trans-Century today, gaining 5.8% on the share price. Now, when it first came to market, there were high expectations. It underperformed, but 6-7 weeks later, things are looking a little bit better. However, investors realigned their perceptions and views on this company.
We've seen a steady stream of fairly encouraging news from Trans-Century. We know that key to their portfolio is the Rift Valley Railways, in which they own 34%, and they've managed to lock in some debt agreements from the DFIs like African Development Bank and IFC, and Equity Bank also participated in that $164 million loan. This is very key to their plans to turn around Rift Valley Railways company, because what they plan to do is invest in the locomotives, invest in the permanent stock, and invest in the IT infrastructure. And going forward, its management plans to triple volumes of cargo ferried on the Kenya-Uganda Railway to 4.5 million tons in 5 years' time. And at that point in time, they're estimating EBITDA revenues, an EBITDA of $100 million, which is not small money at all. So we've seen a steady stream of positive flow about Rift Valley Railways. In fact, they made their first positive monthly EBITDA just a month ago of approximately $1 million.
I mean, also we're seeing sentiment up, and I'm reading into that investors are probably thinking, you know, supporting some of these investment companies is probably better than supporting the banks, which are vulnerable to interest rates and also that are vulnerable to changing policy rates by the CBK going forward. Would that be a better alternative?
Well, looking at Centum in particular, Centum is definitely trading at much cheaper levels than the other banks. I mean, Centum is actually trading at below net asset value. So it's trading at a price to book value of below 1. Yet you can see management's plans of doubling the assets under management to 30 billion shillings by 2014 and having half of their portfolio invested outside Africa by 2014. I think, okay, to be honest, banks in Kenya are fairly immune to the economic environment, as we've seen from the half-year results, but Centum remains a very undervalued play, and any savvy investor wanting to pick up a well-managed company that is currently undervalued would be taking a look at Centum.
We've also had results from the corporate bond for Shelter Afrique, overly subscribed or fully subscribed, and it's largely the banks that have taken positions into that particular bond issuance. Your views?
I think the banks are looking at the bond as being attractive, especially from the floating rate aspect of it. You know, in a time like this when interest rates are rising, you find that floating bonds tend to be more popular than fixed rate bonds, because floating rate bonds in such a rising rate environment would handle the interest rate risk better.
Okay, talking about the interest rate risks, I mean, we're going to have a more detailed conversation about what the CBK is trying to do, but basically raising the interest rates on treasury bills, raising the overnight lending rate, introducing some restrictions, all of this designed to shore up the currency. Do you think they've got it right?
I think it's a step in the right direction. I think there was need to make the shilling more attractive to speculators and make the dollar less attractive to speculators. By tightening up liquidity, it's a step in the right direction. It won't address the problem entirely, because we have issues like the current account deficit is widening. It's been at 8% the last year and the year before. Now it's above 9%. But as we've seen from the response of the market, the shilling has strengthened by around probably I would say 1.5%. So it's a step in the right direction, especially in these uncertain economic times. But there probably is still more that needs to be done.
Right. Let's also talk about what's going on within the agricultural sector. Lerato released their figures. Profits down 72%. That's quite significant. The irony is that they've had a drop in production at a time when the shilling was weaker and when tea prices were looking good. They should have been able to capitalize on changing market conditions, and they didn't.
It's really an unfortunate offshoot of the drought situation we've had this year. We've had the Kenya Tea Board indicate that production is going to be down this year as a result of the La Nina drought conditions that we had late last year and early this year. So unfortunately, it's a case of the wrong thing happening at the right time.
Okay, when we just look at this particular company and earnings per share down to 5 shillings 37 from 19 shillings, I mean, there may be peculiarities that have to do with the company, but considering the drought situation that's prevailing, can we expect that for agro-processors, the fortunes have changed, that the tables will turn into the second half of the year?
I think so. I think there might be a slight improvement because the long rains between March and May were below expectations, but it wasn't exactly drought conditions. And then fingers crossed, we're really hoping to have good short rains between October and November that will be able to help the tea production levels in the country. And you also have to look at things like the change in fair value of the biological assets, which also tends to increase the volatility of the results of these tea companies. But 2011 has been a rough year for most Kenyans and most companies in Kenya, so I expect things to be better going forward.